My thoughts and prayers are with all of those who lost a loved one so senselessly. Children. Children. And with the souls of those who have departed us out of a senseless act of violence. But I won't mince words. Thoughts and prayers alone are not enough. Republicans in Congress who do the bidding of the NRA must search their conscience. And they must wonder, what if it was my child? Would you have thought that you did everything possible to ensure that your child would still be alive? They've consistently put the profits of gun makers ahead of American lives, and it's time that those who continuously fight against common sense safety reforms are called out for their complicity. We saw it after concert goers were slaughtered in Las Vegas and they refused to ban bump stocks, and after first graders were murdered in Sandy Hook and they voted against stronger background checks, and after bullets tore through a nightclub in Orlando and they refused to consider my own legislation to ban the sale of high-capacity magazines. It's getting hard to take my colleagues seriously when they talk about mental illness. They just spent the past year working to reduce access to life-saving mental health care coverage. And last year, the Republican Congress voted to roll back regulations requiring the Social Security Administration to submit records of certain severe mental illnesses to the federal background check system. They're also advancing legislation to make buying silencers easier. Imagine how many more people would have died at the Pulse nightclub if no one heard the gunshots. Meanwhile, law enforcement is sounding the alarm over efforts to allow those with concealed carry permits from other states to bring their handguns here into New Jersey. In the aftermath of Parkland, we again hear the perverse narrative of gun lobby apologists who say we, the people, are powerless in the face of this carnage. I don't believe that for a second. Let us resist the twisted logic that says that we cannot stop people from buying weapons of mass murder and then using them to commit mass murder. It's time my Republican colleagues realize that their fear of a backlash from the NRA pales in comparison to the terror felt by those children in Parkland and the fear I've heard from too many New Jersey parents that their children could be next. If thoughts and prayers for their families who lost their children were enough, we'd never feel this pain again. But it's not enough. It's time for action. There's a handful of Republicans we get to talk to on that issue, and I applaud them. But I have to be honest with you, it's the NRA has possessed them in a way that reasonable gun measures. Look, I respect a hunter, but you don't need an assault weapons with a round of 30 shots a clip that you can just fire off to go hunting. That deer's going to be full of bullets. You're not going to be able to eat that. There's a reason it's called an assault weapon. It's about killing. And the bottom line is we can have, the high-capacity magazines. My legislation to restrict high-capacity magazines. I want these officers to have it if they need it. But I don't think the average citizen needs a high-capacity magazine to shoot 50, 100 rounds. And the list goes on and on. So I can't understand. We can't even seem to get votes on these issues, at least for the American people to know who stands where, because the majority blocks the opportunity for us to have that. It is my hope that the American people will rise up from these horrific tragedies and finally say, we want a response to this in a way that is more than about our thoughts and prayers. They deserve that. And they deserve to know who stands on their side and who does not.
But if 20 dead first graders don't get legislators to vote on this, do you think there is anything that can happen that would lead to that result? Vote?
I truly believe that when we as citizens demand of our representatives to respond to an issue like this, reasonable gun safety measures, when they get the heat at home, as Adlai Stevenson says, they see the light in Washington. They need to feel the heat at home, that this is simply not acceptable. And I don't know how anyone, I go to sleep because I know that as much as I mourn for these kids and I think about my son and my daughter, and I think about the potential, and my granddaughter now, you know, who goes to a daycare, I and my votes and my advocacy and the legislation that I advocate for and support and have for the better part of a quarter of a century, I'm doing what I can. And it's still not enough. I want to try to prick the conscience of my colleagues to try to get them to understand, do you believe that you have done enough if instead of somebody else's child, it would be your child? Can you answer that question to yourself? I hope they can.